Today we went down to the marketplace in the old city of Jerusalem.
Jeremy, we're in this Muslim quarter of the old city. We're in the midst of a marketplace here.
A busy marketplace.
Yeah, very busy. Well, we've got all kind of fruits and vegetables over here. We've got flowers over here.
The marketplace is really the heart of the city. I mean, especially old Jerusalem. You come here to get anything. You come here to get your produce, your precious metals, your clothes. It's like a huge bazaar.
It really is. And I love coming here. The old city has such personality. It really is exciting to come.
Walking through the marketplace in the old city is unlike any other shopping expedition I've gone on. It's not like going through an outlet store in the US. It's not like going to an enclosed mall with escalators and everything is pristine and clean and glass. You're passing shops made out of stones that date back centuries, sometimes millennia. They're rough and there's texture to them. And artifact shop on one side and you turn the corner and there's a butcher on the other side with things hanging in the window. There's nothing else like it. You're going through there and people are coming and going, and when we talk about, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store, or I'm going to go to the market in the West, in the US, we're talking about a large big box store with huge aisles and lots of room and tons of space, but that's not the way this works. You have vendors selling out of these small little hole in the walls all the way down these streets, and they're displaying their wares along the way in just bright colors. A lot of salesmanship going on, a lot of haggling going on. Almost everything's negotiable. You know, the first question you ask is, so how much? And let him throw out a price and then go back and forth. And you kind of have to have an idea of what something ought to go for before you go in. And it's a neat place to go.
I don't really enjoy big cities. I'm more of a country person. I'd much rather stay in the country, have the wide open spaces, but I love the old city of Jerusalem. It's just a maze of alleyways and small roads and hundreds, if not thousands, of little shops. Every 10 feet, there's new little shops on every side. There are people selling everything. This is not just a tourist place. People live there. And so this is where they shop for fruits and vegetables and tennis shoes and clothes and eyeglasses and spices. One of the places where we stopped going through there was one of the spice shops. You knew that you were getting close just because of the aroma in the air.
About 200 yards away, you could smell the spices.
It's a wonderful place to stop.
Some of their spices are combined, you know, for a specific food. So over here on the right, we've got one that's for a falafel, but it's a combined spice. There are multiple spices in that. Or one for meat. Further up, there's some for a Cambodian flavor. And we've got coriander right here, cinnamon right here, and a bunch of different curries. Shawarma. I mean, it's beautiful, and the colors are vibrant, and you can smell everything from so far away.
The old city has so much personality to it. It's divided into 4 quarters, the Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Armenian quarter. And each of those 4 quarters are completely different places. And as you're walking from one quarter to another, you immediately notice that, okay, I'm in a different area now.
And to some degree, that would have been there in the first century. As Jesus was walking in downtown Jerusalem, or as he was walking around the Temple Mount, you would have had vendors, you would have had shops, you would have had stalls. There are examples of that at the first century street by the Temple Mount. And so you'd have that kind of flavor going on, and it's been preserved. That's still the way they do things.
We read about that in the Bible, of course, when any Jewish family came to Jerusalem, especially around feast time, or if they had a special dedication they needed to perform on behalf of their family, they would need to go to some sort of marketplace to purchase doves or a goat or some sort of sacrifice. And so there are all kinds of things there.
Barry, one of the times that Jesus' family came down to Jerusalem, we're told they came down annually for the Passover. Luke tells us that his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know it. You know, they're on their way home. They don't realize that Jesus isn't with their group, and they have to come back and find him. It takes them 3 days, and they find him in the Temple Mount interacting with teachers. So where are we standing right now?
We're standing on the southern steps of the Temple Mount. And so the Jews of that time, when they came to Jerusalem, they would have come up these steps into the temple so that they could have taken care of what they need to do here.
Okay, so these steps that we're standing on are first century steps. We're also facing the southern wall of the Temple Mount. Actually, in this corner, There are the remains of the double gate.
Double gate.
Right? It's been blocked off. It's not in use. We can actually only see about half of that former gate.
Right, there's later period buildings that have blocked a lot of it.
But that would have been one of the entrance points, one of the two southern entrance points
Right.
into the Temple Mount. To imagine the events of Luke chapter 2, throngs of people coming to Jerusalem for the Passover, Jesus and his family coming south from Galilee, they would have been accessing the Temple Mount, they would have been sacrificing, there would have been teaching going on, scribes and rabbis, and Jesus was interacting with those folks.
That's right.
He was impressing the teachers. He was there for multiple days, and when Mary and Joseph finally interact with him and find him, he explains that the reason he stayed behind was to do his Father's business.
That's correct. That would all taken place up here on the Temple Mount.
You'll hear us say a lot, this was the traditional location. You'll hear us say it was somewhere in this area. But there were two primary entrances into the Temple Mount. Some think one was used for an entrance and one was used for an exit. That's even better for us because that's easy to say. Jesus used these steps. Jesus went to the Temple Mount on an annual basis. His family went there for Passover. Jesus walked on these steps. And it's thrilling to think about that and confidently say that. Now, what do you think about Jesus and his parents not realizing that he was gone for so long? I mean, people joke around about leaving their kids at the church building and 5 minutes later going, wait a minute, we have an empty seat. But for a family to be traveling and not realize that for so long, what do we make of that?
As they were going back to Galilee, there would have been a large group of people. It would have been easy for them to assume that Jesus was probably with other family members. And they got halfway up the road, and realized, oh no, he's not here.
They would have thought something along the lines of, Jesus is with Uncle so-and-so or with Aunt so-and-so. And after a few days of tracking that down, they realized, wait a minute, Jesus is not with Uncle or Aunt, he's back in Jerusalem.
He was. And of course, they found him here in the temple talking to the priests and the scribes.
That's right. So you have a 12-year-old boy interacting with these men that have made it their life's work to understand the law, to understand the rabbinical teachings. And this 12-year-old boy is interacting with them, astounding the people that are listening to him. And of course, when his family finds him, Jesus makes the statement that he has to be about his Father's business and making reference to his Heavenly Father. Jesus understands what he's about and what his mission is, even though he's a child.
That's exactly right. And I think it's so interesting how Mary approaches a lot of these things about Jesus. She sees things like that and stores them in her heart. She knows there's something special about this child.
As a parent, I think about how I would have felt to realize I left my Nazarene son, I left in Jerusalem.
And then you couldn't find him for 3 days.
It took you 3 days to find him. And then when you finally do, there isn't this, oh, I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad. There wasn't any of that. There was just this very calm, I needed to be here doing what I was sent to do. I initially probably would have been taken a little aback by that. But they obviously took that to heart. And Luke records that for us to help us understand that even at 12 years old, Jesus understood something about himself and his mission. In this episode of Following the Messiah, we've been talking about the childhood and early years of Jesus, culminating with his 12-year-old trip for the Passover down to Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Now, all of these stops that we've made along the way are like breadcrumbs. We're following a trail. All of these things hint at his identity as the Son of God, the one who came to be the Messiah. We know, especially at that Temple Mount visit, that his mother saved up that trip in her heart, that everything that had happened, her conversation, Jesus saying he must be about his Father's business, that was just one more piece of the puzzle for her to figuring out who Jesus was and what he was about. Now, if those things were special to Mary, and the gospel writers thought they were significant enough to record them for us, then we ought to pay special attention to those things as well. Those things help us understand who Jesus is.